Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Casual Word and Casual Word Radio, where we continue our endeavor to change the world one word at a time. I'm your host, Langley, and today, unfortunately, my guest couldn't make it, but there was a word that got caught in my spirit right at the end of the day, right before I got out of work, and I just felt convicted to go ahead and bring this word because I think it's important for what's going on today. I think it's important for what we're experiencing, not only in our country, but what we're experiencing in our communities, what we're experiencing personally, what we're experiencing within our families, intimately within ourselves. So I'm going to jump right into this word. I'm coming from Daniel, and this is chapter 3. Where I'm starting at verses 16 and read through verses 25. And I always want to note I'm reading from the New International Version. I actually didn't plan on doing this, and this is how God always shifts your plans around. So I didn't have a Bible with me. Obviously, like anybody else, I use technology. I use my phone whenever I want to look up a verse, but I want to read this and not miss anything because it's important for what the message is today. So thankfully, where I use the studio here at Summit, this is the co-work facility. So shout out to those guys for always letting me come in here pretty much on a whim and utilize their facility to get a good word out for you guys. Again, we're going to start in Daniel chapter 3, verses 16 through 25. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude toward them changed. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter. There's that number 7, 7 times hotter than usual, and commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent, and the furnace was so hot that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, weren't there 3 men that were tied up and thrown into the fire? They replied, certainly, your majesty. He said, look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the fourth looks like a son of God. Guys, that was Daniel chapter 3, verses 16 through 25. Got a few things to cover here, but the word that I want to give you, the word that's been in my spirit today, and this is taking everything we've been talking about to the next level, is fearless. Now, we talked about not being anxious. We've talked about not having any worry, but now we're going to talk about being fearless, being bold, standing up for not only what you believe in, but having a radical faith to know that God's going to do a thing, even when you don't understand, even when you can't see it, even when it looks like all hope is lost, and being fearless in the face of your enemies, being fearless in the face of adversity, being fearless in the face of trial and tribulation. So what does it mean to be fearless? Being fearless means that even though it is perilous, even though it is dangerous, even though you might lose your life, you still do it anyway. And those are extreme things. But being fearless just means that even it's something that scares you, that you're afraid of, and you still go and do it. That's being fearless. It's similar to having courage and being courageous. It's being fearless. And so you look here, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego first told him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. So what they're saying is, and what we should all be saying is, it doesn't matter what you think about me. I'm still going to serve my God. It doesn't matter what you know about me. I'm still going to serve my God. It doesn't matter what I used to do. Brian and I talked about that yesterday. I'm still going to serve my God. See, I don't have to defend myself. So many of us get caught up in trying to make sure that society knows that we're right? We want to be vindicated, right? We want retribution. We want to make sure that the story's straight. We want to make sure that our side's being told. We want to make sure that whoever's slandering us or whatever's going on, that people know the truth. Well, people will know the truth by the content of your character and by your conduct. You don't have to defend yourself. You don't have to go tell your side of the story. You don't have to get out here and try and make someone else look bad to make yourself look good. Okay? So that's what they're talking about. I don't have to defend myself against what you're saying, King Nebuchadnezzar, because the God that I serve already knows who I am, right? But even if he doesn't, I'm still not going to serve your gods. We're still not going to worship your gods. So we're saying that even this is another level of fearlessness and being bold, is even if he doesn't do what you would like him to do, he's still God and he's still in control. We talked about him shifting your plans. We talked about him changing certain things. We talked about him, moving you around against what you think you should be doing or what you plan to do, what you want to do or whatnot. And that's just how he operates. Sometimes that's how it's going to be. But even if your plans don't come to fruition, even if he doesn't come in and save the day, even if he doesn't do a thing the way that you want it done, he is still God. He is still the God of all power. He is still a God of peace. He is still merciful. He is still gracious, right? And we still serve him because in most cases, whatever we're trying to do is small compared to what God's trying to do for us. Whatever we're trying to accomplish is tiny compared to what God wants to have for us. So a lot of times the reason things don't work out is because God has something better. And when things don't make sense and when you're not understanding what's going on and when you don't have the answers, that's when God's working. I was listening today to Marcus Gill, a young pastor out of South Carolina, somebody I really enjoy. I try to catch him when he goes live, and he talked about asking God to step into a problem, step into a relationship, step into a job, step into a situation, right? And so that's where we're going with this, is when you ask God to step in, let him have control. And watch what happens. It's going to be, right, exceeding abundantly all that you can ask for. So when you're being fearless, it's because that the God that you serve is going to step in and he's going to blow your mind. He's going to shift the entire narrative of the situation. He's going to change the outcome. And that's the kind of God that we serve. And so you can see here that when the men tried to put Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the fire, they died. They burned up by the fire that didn't even touch those three men. And so what you can take away from that is, right, we talk about all things work together for the good of those that love him and called according to his purpose. What the enemy meant for your destruction, God will use for your elevation. And that's what happened here. So the men who were ordered to throw these men into the fire for their death ended up dying. Now, we're not saying that someone may have physical harm come to them for trying to do something to you. God can do anything, but let's not take that too literal. But what we're saying is that when people and situations and things that the enemy is throwing at you, meant to throw you off and meant to bring you down and meant to destroy you and meant to hurt you, God's going to take all of that. That's all part of the recipe, right? That's all part of what he's putting together before he puts you in the oven, so that you can come out purified, so that you can bake. And we talked about burning off those impurities. This is all part of that process. And you have to trust the process, right? So when you're being bold and when you're being fearless, that means you trust the process, and that you can stand in front of your enemies, and you can stand in front of a situation. You can stand in front of a circumstance, and you can stand in front of something that you don't understand. And you can say, I believe that God's going to do a thing because I know the kind of God that I serve. And you can be fearless in knowing and bold in standing there and saying, I know that what you're doing right now is going to end up for my good. It's going to end up giving God the glory, because everything that is meant for evil is going to be for your good. All things work together for the good of those that love him and called according to his purpose. Is everything going to be good? No, it's not. We talk about that all the time, guys. It's not always going to be good, but it's working together for your good. You have to look at the bigger picture. You have to be able to understand past your moment. You've got to be able to look past that feeling, past that emotion, past that right now, right? You have to be able to look past the now and look to the future. The now is real. The now is where we live. The now hurts. But the now is not the end. Right? The now is just placement for the tomorrow. So you can see that even King Nebuchadnezzar saw and recognized God inside the furnace with them. So this is why no weapon formed against you will prosper, because when you're walking with God, you're doing exactly that. Just like here in the word, when you're walking with him, you've got that hedge of protection. You've got an army of angels around you. You've got shields. You've got boundaries. You've got all the things that keep you protected. And when we talk about putting on the full armor of God, when you have God with you, not only do you have your armor on, but you have his armor. And in conjunction with that, you guys, like in the Roman times, you make that phalanx. You guys are linked up. It's impenetrable. It can't get by you. No arrows will harm you. So guys, this is what I'm talking about being fearless and being bold, because when you're walking with Christ, you're walking with the supreme being. You're walking with someone who's never been defeated. You're walking with someone who went down to hell, told them, I'm going to take these keys and I'm going to go take these people with me, and you can't do anything about it. And the enemy just had to sit there and watch. That's the kind of God that we serve. You are walking with a God who the devil had to go and tempt. He didn't have to go and find the enemy. The enemy had to come to him, and he still lost. Right? You're talking to and walking with a God that raised Lazarus, that blew into the valley of dry bones. You're talking to a God that sustained Jonah in the whale. You're talking to the God who blinded Saul and then turned him into Paul, one of the greatest prophets that we've ever seen. That's the kind of God that you're walking with. That's the kind of God that we serve. Guys, you can be bold. You can be fearless. Does it take work? Absolutely. Do you have to learn and cultivate? This is why reading the scripture is important. This is the guidebook. These parables, these stories, this is your inspiration. When you see these things, you recognize the power that's within you and the boldness and the ferocity that's within you to stand up to the enemy and say, you will not have me today. You will not have me tomorrow. You will not have my family. You will not have my job. You will not have my mind. You will not have my heart, because the God that I serve has me protected. And when you stand with that boldness, what does it say? What has Brian been talking about? That they tremble and flee. When Jesus was walking with his disciples and the man came that was filled with the legion, they came running, screaming, afraid. Please don't kill us. That's the kind of God you're walking with. That's why we can be bold. That's why we can be fearless, guys, because you're walking with a Father that no enemy can ever stop. That's why he knows the plans that he has for you. They are for good and not for evil, to give you the expected end, because that is the victory that you have been guaranteed when you decided to walk with him. That is the victory that is guaranteed because the enemy cannot win. That is a victory that's guaranteed because the enemy cannot stop anything that God has for you. So be bold, be courageous, be fearless. There's no reason to be afraid. We talk about that. There's no reason to have apprehension. I know it takes a while. I know it's hard to conceive sometimes when the whole world is falling apart around you, when you're falling apart on the inside, when your body is tired, when your mind is weak. But what is it? When you're weak, that's when he is strong. If you will just rest in him, he will sustain you. We've already talked about that. We're not going to get back into that. But when you are sustained, when you have that peace that surpasses all understanding, you can then have that boldness. You can then be fearless, because you know that the God that you serve, the same God that served Isaac and Abraham, the same God that Solomon served, right? The same God that gave Job double for his trouble. That's the kind of God that we serve. The enemy has to have permission, whether you let him in or whether he has to go to God directly. But as long as you are standing and fighting, as long as you are bold and fearless. What does the word say? He will flee from you because you have the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. You have that Father inside of you. You have Christ inside of you. And if you carry that Christ inside of you, and if you're walking with that Christ, people will not only see it like Nebuchadnezzar saw him inside of the furnace, people will see the God in you. They'll recognize the Spirit in you. And not only that, but everything that the enemy is trying to do, every weapon, every arrow will have no penetration. Anybody who's trying to stop you or do anything, none of that matters. They will have no effect because they have to flee. That's what being bold is. That's being fearless. That is what it means when we can step in the boldness of Christ. Just like these men said to Nebuchadnezzar, we don't have to explain ourselves to you. And we will not serve your gods. We will not worship your gods because the God that we serve can do all things. And surely if he will deliver them out of the furnace, he will deliver you out of whatever you're going through. Guys, that's my word for today. Be fearless, be bold, stand in the gap for others, be bold, be fearless for other people. Not everybody's going to be where you are. We're all at a different place in our walk. We're all at a different place in our maturity. So sometimes you got to be fearless and bold for somebody else so that you can help them walk in that same spirit of boldness. Guys, as always, let's change the way that we think so we can change the way that we live. Until next time, stay blessed.